Wow, did it get quiet in here fast? We still got 1 minute to go, so. Yeah.
On the boards and commissions agenda.
Okay, good morning. I would like to call to order today's meeting of the State of Nevada Board of Examiners for December 10th, 2019 to order. If I could ask the clerk to take the roll, please.
Good morning. Governor Sisolak.
Here.
Attorney General Ford has been excused for this meeting.
First time set aside for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item on today's agenda, items on the agenda, please step forward, identify yourself for the record. Comments be limited to.
We do not.
Okay, hearing and seeing no one, move on to item number 3, approval of November 12th, 2019 minutes.
Move for approval.
We have a motion for approval. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor? Those corrections, you just want to leave it to staff to include?
I can leave that to staff to
I
include.
can leave that to staff to include to make the non-substantive changes to the agenda, to the minutes, I apologize. Item number 4, state vehicle purchases.
Good morning, Governor, Secretary of State. There are 2 requests for 8 vehicles in this agenda item. The first is from the Department of Administration Fleet Services for 1 new vehicle for $43,402. Funding is included in Assembly Bill 501 of the 2019 legislative session for this vehicle. And the second request is from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Division of Water Resources for 1 new vehicle included in the agency budget, both through enhancement units and an Assembly Bill 509 of one-shot funds. Representatives from the agencies are available to answer any questions.
Questions? We have a motion.
Please move for approval.
We have a motion for approval. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5 rather, authorization to contract with the current and/or former state employee.
By the agency purchasing division. Under 5A, the second and third items are for 2 former employees for uniform security services. The process may be utilized by any state agency that uses these services. The next item is Department of Administration Purchasing Division on behalf of the Governor's Finance Office to contract with a former employee to provide administrative assistant duties relating to the. And I skipped one. My apologies. Let me back up. The fourth item is also from Department of Administration Purchasing Division to contract with a former employee to provide tuberculosis case management services on a part-time basis. This item relates to agenda item 9, contract number 13. And then I'll skip down to item 5B, Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Child and Family Services. Will work on a part-time basis and will be employed by Manpower through MSA number 18404. And the final item under C is Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Healthcare Finance and Policy to contract with a number 21. Representatives from the agencies are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? I don't have any questions, but I have a statement, and this came up in my briefing. And Director, you know how I feel. I want to make sure that these are used for emergency hire, the hiring process. This was meant for extraordinary circumstances and situations. And I'd ask them all to keep that in mind as we move forward. So, we have a motion?
Move for approval with the exception of 5A.
We have a motion for approval with the exception of 5A,
Number 1? I'm sorry.
subsection
They're telling
1,
me number 1.
sub
yeah.
1, right.
Sub 1. Thank you.
Item number 6, request for access funds from the Prison Industries Capital Projects account.
Okay, item number 6. Pursuant to NRS 209.192, the Department of Corrections Prison Industries is requesting access to $184,720 from the Fund for New Construction of Facilities for Prison Industries. Funds in this account can be used to house new or expand existing employment or training of offenders or to purchase or lease equipment for training or operating industries, to pay for operations of prison industries, or to advertise or promote goods produced or services provided by prison industries. Expenditures from the account must be approved by the Board of Examiners and the Interim Finance Committee prior to being expended. There is currently
Any questions? I've got one question to the department, if they could step up. For it that we're going down a list, or do these just come out of the blue?
Good morning, Governor. For the record, Bill Quinga, Deputy Director, Department of Corrections. What we do is we get a list from each supervisor to prioritize what equipment's needed to enhance and produce quality products, and then provide and increase offender labor to have
Is-
more jobs
So when you're getting one from each,
section.
okay, got it. I have no problem. We have a motion on the floor. Thank you very much, both for your answers. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 7, approval of proposed leases.
There are 4 leases in Agenda Item 8 today for consideration by the board. Item number 4 was not considered by the board at its last meeting. Do
For
any-
clarification, that's the State Board of Dental Examiners, and that one we're going to take separately because I'm not approving that one.
Okay, so then we would, any questions on any of these items?
That's the only one I had a question on. How do you,
Okay.
you want to give me a motion on 1 through 3?
Yes, I'd love to. On number 7, move for approval of 1 through 3 on the leases.
We have a motion on the floor for the approval. Motion passes. You want a motion for denying on item number 4? Yeah.
Move for a denial on number 4.
We have a motion for denial on Agenda 7, number subsection 4, Nevada State Board of Dental Examiners. Motions for denial. All in favor for the denial signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 4 is denied. Number 8, approval of proposed contracts.
There are 45 contracts in Agenda Item 9 for approval by the board this morning. Agenda Item 8.
Agenda item 8. Before you get too
I'm
far
sorry,
in
you're
here,
right. I did
on
say that.
agenda item number 8, I'm going to have to recuse myself on number 18. I serve on the national board for the JAG program.
So that item will be moved to the January BOE for
That'll have to be moved
consideration.
since we don't have a quorum without my,
Any questions on any of the other items? Number 39,
39.
GO reentry.
Yeah. Approval with the exception of 18 and 39.
Move for approval of,
With the exception of 18 and 39, which have been pulled. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 9, approval of proposed master service agreements.
There are 13 master service agreements in Agenda Item 9 for approval by the board this morning. MSA number 13 relates to Agenda Item 5A, as previously noted. Do you have any questions on any of these items?
I do not. Do you, Secretary? And I want to point out, Susan, I really, you answer all of our questions at that time, even though they're done individually, they're not briefed together, we're not briefed together, and it makes the meetings go much more efficiently, and the questions are all answered. So I sincerely appreciate that, and I know my colleagues do.
thank you, Governor, yes, and prepared by your staff, Governor, so I really do appreciate their input. Thank you.
Yeah, they're great. Okay, do we have a motion on item number 9?
Move for approval.
We have a motion on the floor for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Here and seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 10, information item, clerk of the board contract.
2019 and November 14th, 2019. This item is informational only. Do any of the members have questions on any of these items?
The only question I have, or I guess it's a comment, I noticed that there are numerous items that are $49,000 plus, but not $50,000. I don't think it's coincidental that they're falling. I guess that's just the way it is, 49,919. Okay. Got it. Okay, that's an information item. That duly noted. Item number, do you have any questions on that one? Item number 11, information.
Contributions collected by county pursuant to NRS 482.480, also known as the Complete Streets Program, for the period from July 1, 2019 to September 30th of 2019. During the quarter ending September 30th, the department collected $89,686 compared to $89,902 in the same period last year and $90,594 collected last quarter. Of the amount collected, approximately 78% was from Clark. To administer the collection and distribution of contributions, the department distributed $88,459.47 to the 4 counties in the first quarter of fiscal year 2020. Approximately 11.74% of those registering a vehicle during the fiscal year contributed to the Complete Streets Program, ranging from 9.1% in Douglas County to 14.78% in Clark County. Are there any questions on this item? Allocations from the disaster relief account pursuant to NRS 353.2755. Pursuant to statute, state agencies and local governments can request a grant or loan through the Division of Emergency Management from the disaster relief account if, because of the disaster, the local government is unable to pay for an expense from available funds. Applicants must submit their intention to apply not later than of the Legislative Council Bureau of the intent. Within 18 months of the determination an event constitutes a disaster, the state agency or local government must submit their final request to the Division of Emergency Management and the Department of Taxation, including whether the request is for a loan or a grant, and the final amount of the request. The Division of Emergency Management and the Department of Taxation are required to review the requests from Nye and Lincoln County are related to the Storm Area 51 event that took place in September. Are there questions on this item?
Yes, there are. I have questions on this item. Who do we have here from Lincoln? Good morning. My question is, I understand, I don't know how this was an emergency when you gave an approval despite our concerns regarding this issue, and then expect the taxpayers of the state to basically.
All of our decisions were based on two things. One was the facts that we had placed in front of us at the time, and the other was the threat that we faced. As you know, there was the Facebook event that challenged that up to 2 million people may descend upon Lincoln County, and the threat was the influx of people that would double or triple or 100 times the size of our community and our 2 business owners from Lincoln County approached the commissioners and asked if they could hold an event to give people a place to go. The commissioners made their decision based on an attempt to have those events cover some of the costs that we were faced with by the challenge that we had, and also to give people a place to go other than Storm Area 51. They can't stop all of us. The events that they permitted provided their own security, their own EMS, their own trash services, or Lincoln County itself went directly to those events. Our attempt was anything outside of those events tied to the Storm Area 51 Facebook event was the threat and challenge that we faced. Their approval of the other 2 events were in attempt to allow them to encumber some of that cost.
Okay, so there are Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department that are not getting reimbursed for all the money that they put in to an event in Lincoln County that they opposed and Lincoln County, through their supervisors, kept promoting. And to come back that some businesses that did nothing to stop it. Now, Nye didn't approve of those events that were going to be held. They didn't issue any permits. I can tell you that without a doubt, when I spent 10 years on the Clark County Commission, we analyzed the potential effects, unintended consequences of what an event could be, and bail them out when the county commission made a decision, I think is
way. We do understand where you're coming from, and we expressed those concerns, and the county commission did as well. I know that they did not promote, even though it appeared that 2 million people were going to come, but 2 million people say, we're going to come to storm this military base and cause civil disobedience into the county. We certainly did not want to promote that. I think, and I can't speak directly for the commissioner, business places to have anything. The event was still coming no matter what. And
I
that
don't
was
know how
our
you
fear.
can say that they knew that it was coming. They might have assumed it was coming, but with the approval, it was certainly coming. Without the approval, we don't know who would have shown up. I know that I met with the folks from Creech, the folks from Nellis. This was all hands on board to deal with this situation, and worst case scenarios, the possibility of having the helicopter SWAT teams in there to handle some of these situations, because this, I don't know how they can possibly come to the state and expect them to do that.
I understand that, but I still think the event was going to come no matter what. That was my fear, and we don't know that.
never
You're
know.
absolutely right. We'll never know, and I don't
Right.
think, it was kind of the same way as we didn't know how many people were going to come. I mean, 2 million people said we're going to come and storm Area 50. We know that wasn't going to be the case, but even if 1% of that 2 million people came, we were very concerned about that. And as the emergency manager said, the money that we expended were outside of those events. Our most concern is whether they were going, because I mean, they said, you're not going to stop all of us. I mean, that's basically,
I know.
they're going to break the law no matter what we do, and that was a big concern to us.
Well, it was a big concern to everybody that was in the meetings of 24 people that we had to convene, and took up an enormous amount of public safety's time, the military's time, and everyone's. If this would have been the Division of Expected Consequences manager,
Sherry Brigham, Deputy Director for the Department of Public Safety. I was just going to say the same thing, that we won't be making a decision today, but after the review from taxation and the review from the division, et cetera, and you have the authority to determine that these expenses will or will not be repaid.
and I appreciate that. And Sheriff, I want to thank you. You were phenomenal. You buy in terms of, their SWAT teams and whatnot that might have been needed at some point. And everybody was on edge, and you went above and beyond. Fire went above and beyond. Emergency approval. And that's what they should have expected. You guys were great. I appreciate it. You helped minimize it. Maybe it's ended up as well as it did because you were there on the ground and you helped us. But people went through a lot, and there were a lot of sleepless nights over this thing that some people thought was funny. And it wasn't funny for the people.
My entire life, and I think Eric's as well, for a month and a half of this, it was just ridiculous. I mean, it was ridiculous, but I do want to thank all those entities, specifically law enforcement entities from across the state. It was incredible. We absolutely could not have done it. I don't have the force with a dozen patrol officers.
Happen, and I think it goes to show what we can do when there is a true emergency, how everybody can pull together and respond and protect the citizens of the state. But had we had a true emergency at the same time we had this, we'd have been in a world of hurt. So thank you for what you did. C, right, moving on. I'm done with that one.
Okay. All right. Number C, this report is on overtime and accrued compensatory leave for the first quarter of fiscal year 2020. My staff has summarized the report, so I'm not going to read the details, but I will hit a couple of highlights. For the first quarter of fiscal year 2020, overtime pay and compensatory leave account for a total of approximately $12.9 million, or 4.88% of base pay. The Department of Corrections had the highest amount of overtime and comp time at $3.83 million, and services at $2.7 million, or 3.59% of base pay. The two agencies together account for 50.2% of the overtime compensatory time accrued for the quarter. And then as a percentage of salary, the Department of Public Safety at $2.39 million is at 10.7% of base pay, and that is the highest percentage of overtime. Final item is an update on lobbyist contracts for Title 54 boards. This list does not include contracts for other services, just lobbying contracts. Pursuant to NRS 333.020, occupational boards are included in the definition of using agencies of the purchasing division, and therefore board contracts are subject to Board of Examiners review. The information provided in the attached summary is current through November 12, 2019. Contracts with an expiration prior to that date are included as they were active when the first report was prepared in June of 2019. This list is inclusive of all lobbying contracts that exist within the contracting tracking system. The list includes individuals and/or entities that appear to have been working for occupational boards during the 2019 session. This information was obtained through a review of the legislative clerk of the board approval, and over 50,000 require board approval. We have had a number of entities reach out to us with items that they would like added to the record today. So we can do that during public comment or now.
Okay, you can do it now. Who's adding it to the record?
The Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners, the Board of Massage Therapy, Board of Dispensing Opticians, and the Board of Psychological Examiners.
Or adding additional from
These are from the boards.
the lobbyists,
The boards.
insiders, public political insiders, as some of the media call them. Go ahead.
They're fairly extensive.
The insiders are extensive, or the,
Now. Executive Director, to whom it may concern, concerning the recent discussion regarding professional service contracts within boards and commissions, I wanted to reach out and clarify where our board is at in the process of ensuring compliance with the standards and policies of the Board of Examiners. Pertaining to the conversations that were had around contracts that are under the threshold requiring Board of Examiner approval, we are working as quickly as possible to bring our contract with our lobbyist up to date. The contract is under the $50,000 threshold, which I was mistakenly believed did not need to be submitted to the Board of Examiners. I have gotten clarification on what is required, and again, will be transparency and compliance with Nevada law. For transparency, the current proposed contract amount for our lobbyist is $12,000 annually, paid in the monthly amount of $1,000. I have attached the current proposed contract from our lobbyist as reference. Because the current contract expired, we are reaching out for bids and will be submitting the chosen Anderson, Executive Director. I understand that the Board of Massage Therapy has been identified as having lobbying services provided by Kathleen Laxalt during the 2019 session without a contract for services. Initially, the board chose to have the Executive Director, Chair, and Board Counsel participate as the interface between the board and the legislature. After the resignation of legal counsel, I chose to hire Ms. Laxalt to assist me. Ms. Laxalt was paid $1,999 for services provided during a portion of the session. The expense did not exceed the 2,000 threshold, therefore no contract was generated between the board and Ms. Laxalt. Although the board does not currently Board of Psychological Examiners, Morgan Glitch, Executive Director. This letter is in response to the minutes of your November 14th, 2019 meeting, which covered a discussion of the boards that employed lobbyists during the 2019 session without BOE-approved contracts in place. My board did employ Ms. Kathleen Laxalt in 2019. However, I have been in the process of reactivating my contract manager status with delay from purchasing division. Due to the small board office, I have been unable to attend the few classes I've made it into due to lack of office coverage. I've been unable to attend the recertification class. Ms. Laxalt and the board do have a letter of understanding that was submitted during the board audits. I apologize for the misunderstanding on my part and assure you there was no intention to conceal the fact we had employed a lobbyist or the amount being paid for those services. Legislative session to discuss any updates we received from our lobbyist. We also did not intend to disregard the requirement to have contracts for professional services approved by your board. To that end, I have begun the process of completing a contract with the assistance of another executive director who is an active contract manager status, which will be submitted to the BOE staff for approval. Thank you for your time, and please let me know if you require further information. And the final one is the Board of Dispensing Opticians. This letter is in response to the minutes of your November 14th, 2000 meeting, which cover a discussion of the boards that employed lobbyists during the 2019 $7,500 was beneath the threshold amount requiring a formal contract to be in place. I apologize for the misunderstanding on my part and assure you there was no intention to conceal the fact we had employed a lobbyist or the amount being paid for those services. Lobbying services is a line item on the profit and loss budget report that is presented at each of our board meetings and included with the public meeting materials. The board also has a standing agenda item throughout the legislative session to discuss any updates we receive from our lobbyist. We also did not intend to disregard the requirement and our landlord. Ms. Laura Freed at the Governor's Finance Office has been very helpful in clarifying the requirements for vendor contracts and the process for having them approved. I have also contacted our District Attorney General, I think that's supposed to say Deputy Attorney General. Mr. Gregg, we submitted to the BOE staff for approval. And that is from Corinne Cedrin, the Executive Director. And that completes those items.
Thank you. I appreciate the transparency which some of these, I know lobbyists and insiders that like to operate in this area of anonymity and the shadows and throw criticisms around legislature. And they're lobbying against items that some departments are asking for and arguing against each other. And with the legislators, I think that's a problem. And I can tell you that when this is brought up at my Western governors and different governors associations that I'm at, we're one of few that have this kind of a lobbying effort going on, being paid for by various associations. It's no secret that, to my staff's credit, and got these folks in the dark in their anonymity working against us, and this idea that there's a letter of understanding so that they don't have to issue a contract or it falls under a threshold isn't acceptable to me. There's a clear attempt here to circumvent the idea of transparency and accountability, and some folks are helping them do that. I certainly am going to take a firm stand in the next legislative session to do something as it relates to these boards. And
No, Governor, but I thank you for your due diligence on this and for making everybody aware of it. It's something that we've talked about in the legislature, but not to this extent, so thank you.
thank you. Yep. Okay, that wraps up D. It brings us to number 12, public comment. This is the second time set aside for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item, please step forward, identify yourself for the record, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Any members of the public? Any lobbyists want to come forward? Political insiders? No? Okay. Do we have anyone in Las Vegas?
78-year-old woman. Not only did the surgeons ignore her medical directive so as to enrich themselves, they self-righteously explained that when someone is under surgical care, they can override the medical directive at will. So let me explain to you what exactly that meant for this 78-year-old woman who was told that this was a 45-minute procedure, who was told she would be home in 48 hours. Now, first understand that this 78-year-old woman has a great two big-time heart surgeons who are really told her this repeatedly for nearly 3 years straight. But this isn't even the worst of it. For while I was this woman's caregiver, she had lost 50 pounds in the last 5 years, and we were seeing excellent improvements. You see, the doctors had diagnosed her with aortic stenosis, which is essentially a calcification of the out her clogged arteries with simple diet changes. And we even expanded her valve opening dramatically. So this woman, feeling deathly afraid, decides to submit to the pressure of these greedy doctors. But then she writes a medical directive that demands no heroic measures be taken. Then these greedy, arrogant, worthless doctors actually spend 3 hours on the first 45-minute procedure, which essentially kills her. You see, the medical device didn't seal properly. It slipped. So they put in a second valve up through the first valve, but both valves fail. And her heart makes her heart pound out of her chest. And they keep her on a breathing tube so she doesn't die, which is exactly what she didn't want. It's horrendous, but they aren't done torturing her yet. She goes through 3 more 3-hour experimental surgeries, all of which were called last-ditch efforts by the doctors. And I was this 78-year-old woman's best friend, and power of attorney, the soulless medical profession destroy our country. We mustn't let these greedy demonic vampires feed off the suffering of our old people any longer. This means we must give the power to the patient while educating them as to every risk factor involved. I'm sure this woman would have lived another 20 years, but they tortured her and killed her.
That's anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to speak during the second session of public comment? Seeing no one. Anyone in Carson City? Last chance. Secretary Sagaski.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate it. I failed to ask previous building, and so I would like that report sent to me. I have not seen that, and then I'll ask the questions that I have, that I had on for today, but I won't ask those until I get the report. I want to thank you for that. And then I'd like noted that, I didn't when you were up here, but Governor, Prison Industries has been instrumental. If anybody wants a political history book, please come to my office, you can have one. But they were very instrumental in helping us print that book, so.
That brings, do we have a motion, item number 13 for adjournment?
Adjourn this meeting.
Move to
Thank
adjourn.
you.
Any discussion here and seeing none? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.